Normally, I am not the type of person, or should I say audio user, who are into Bluetooth, TWS or wireless type of solution. But when SOUNDPEATS contacted me almost 2 months ago, they asked me whether I'll be interested to try one of their TWS earphone, which is the Engine 4. I was intrigued. Intrigued because, two things. First, it is the first earphone Bluetooth which runs on LDAC that I am aware of. And also, secondly, it supports dual driver configuration. So, long story short, I have this Engine 4 with me now, sent to me. Thank you, SOUNDPEATS. And in fact, as you can see here, it comes with a very simple box. And what's inside, you're going to get this typical looking cradle, which also serves as the charging docking station for it. First and foremost, just have a look at the design itself here. This Engine 4 is very well designed. I am actually impressed. It looks luxurious and in fact premium. The build itself is very, very solid. Comfort-wise, I am happy to say that due to the ergonomic design here, which is very nice, very well done, I was able to wear this almost like half a day without any element of fatigue. And in fact, once I get used to it, it is so easy to forget that this thing is attached to my ear. It is kind of a bit heavy, but like I say, once you get used to it, it's nothing. Okay, what's the deal about this Engine 4 then? Why is it a bit special than the rest of the TWS that I have tested before? First, this thing runs on LDAC. So if you know anything about LDAC, LDAC is in fact developed by Sony, okay? And it is perhaps until today the highest resolution wireless Bluetooth protocol you can get, widely open. There is another one which is U80 from Hebe, which is practically lossless, as they claim it, but it is not widely used yet. And in fact, I haven't seen any, device running U80. So let's just go back to LDAC. So the special thing about LDAC is that it actually runs almost lossless kind of resolution. As you can see here, it is designed to support up to 990 kbps at 32-bit. Okay, and I will explain later why does it matter. Because when I look at the previous TWS or Bluetooth earphone that I have used, normally they'll just typically they run on SBC. So as you can see here, SBC at max, they will offer you at around 345 kbps. So it's almost like 3 times lower in resolution as compared to LDAC. And another popular one, which is Qualcomm, aptX as well will offer you at least up to 512 kbps, I think. All right. So that's about the highest that you can go. Going directly from TWS when attached to a phone like this or even to a PC. Because typically LDAC previously was only designed to work between connectivity between, let's say, a DAC to a player, but not directly to the earphone because it requires a bit more of, power and a bit more of configuration. But somehow, due to the advancement that we have today, SOUNDPEATS has been able to implement LDAC to stream directly to the earphone. So this is how it looked like for the configuration of the driver inside. Like I mentioned earlier, this thing is a dual driver. So it has a 6mm tweeter at the front there, which I presume would be used for the higher frequency, and the 10mm woofer, which is mainly normally designed for lower frequency. Okay, so that's pretty much one of the configuration. This thing support Bluetooth 5.3, the latest one, and it will connect seamlessly with any type of Android phone. Sorry, I don't have iPhone to test, but I believe it should also support iPhone. But if you are using upon iPhone, most likely you will not be using the LDAC. It will be up to SBC only. It is absolutely essential and important to download this app called SOUNDPEATS from Google Play Store. So just going to open it up and show to you quickly. All right. So on the main screen here, immediately after detection, it will show both of this Engine 4 and the battery percentage for each side so that it will be easy for you to track, all right, how much power is left. And of course, most importantly here, This app serves for many purposes. One of the key things is that if you like to tweak with the sound itself, of course, you are given an opportunity to use EQ, adaptive EQ even, and some of the sound preset. And for myself, because normally I prefer to have, something which is a bit more less colored and a bit more truthful to the sound itself. So I always put this Engine 4 on SOUNDPEATS Classic. And I don't even touch custom equalizer. Alright, so you can also choose game mode, which somehow change some sort of like the presentation, the staging of the spatial positioning itself. So it became a bit more holographic, but probably not suitable for music. And you would notice there, I set this to disable all function of touch key. Okay, so let's talk about that a bit. You see, when you attach this like this, right, what you can do is that, right, you can do some adjustment to the volume itself by just simply like moving it up like this, or even like doing tapping to play and pause. But I have found out that by enabling this feature to do like say touch function, it's kind of a bit annoying because I am very clumsy. Whenever let's say I do this or adjust my glasses, I tend to touch the faceplate here and inadvertently changing the volume or even skipping a song. So in order to mitigate that, I just simply disable it. Problem solved. Okay. And you can also do dual device connection. But if you do that, meaning that allowing this to have like multiple pairing concurrently, it will only allow SBC, but not LDAC. Okay. So now let's just talk about the connection of the LDAC itself. Okay, so if you are running on Android and you have developer mode, right, which I already enable here, okay, developer option, this is where you can see, right, at what level does this Bluetooth runs on, okay. Remember I mentioned earlier that LDAC can run up to 990 kbps, okay. So this is where we set it, okay, confirm, all right. So as you can see here, by default, if you are not changing anything, if you are not going into developer mode, all right, it will always be set at best effect, adaptive bit rate. And in fact, if you insist on always pushing it at 990 kbps or even 909 kbps, which is near lossless, you can set it there. All right. But the caveat of using that is that throughout my own usage, whenever I set it to maximum at 990, all right, there is a tendency to get the sound cut off. All right. So depending on how far the phone is from the unit. For example, sometimes when I am outside wearing this, all right, attached to my ear, when I move around a lot and I place my phone on the table instead of in my pocket, sometimes I get disconnected. And the best way to mitigate that is that, in fact, to switch back to adaptive mode, allowing this Engine 4 and your phone to adjust, the connection strength depending on the distance itself. So if you are confident that you would be able to keep your phone close to your body, all right, it is completely okay to use, that maximum 990 kbps. Okay. Now, let's talk about the sound itself, okay, when running on this LDAC. Okay, so remember that I mentioned to you just now, all right, this LDAC allows you to run almost lossless. So I'm just going to pick one song here, one of my favorite, okay, and this is one of the highest that I have in my system right now, a Diana Krall song, which runs on, as you can see there, in fact, this is a FLAC file running 3203 kbps, way higher than 990, obviously. So when I play this song through this, one thing that I notice is that at least to the limit of my listening ability, I do not feel that there's any kind of degradation of sound quality that much at all. Okay, even though it has been downsampled to as low as perhaps at around 900 kbps from 3002. Okay, so that is one thing. And another thing is that, let's say that I play something which is a lot lower. Okay, so for example, this song here. All right, so natively this song right, which is a FLAC as well, okay, lossless file. It actually has been compressed to run at as low as 925 kbps. So what I'm trying to actually show you right now is that if I were to play this song at this 925 kbps from my player here, which is CB Music, and stream through this using LDAC at full maximum capacity, right, I am in fact getting 100%. Okay, now let's talk about the most important aspect of this SOUNDPEATS Engine 4, the sound itself. How does it sound like? I will openly admit upfront that I am impressed with the sound performance of this SOUNDPEATS Engine 4. It exceeded my expectation because if I were to recall my experience with previous Bluetooth devices which I have tested before, even Sony owned TWS, I would say that this definitely exceeded the kind of performance which I have experienced before. Let's just start with the sound performance itself. Okay, for example, when I use this listening to YouTube music or even Spotify, which is typically at under 320 kbps, I do not feel that there's any sort of downscaling or degradation in terms of sound quality, especially if I am running in LDAC mode, right? Running in maximum setting. So definitely that is quite a surprise for me. And talking about the sound tuning itself, this is definitely something that I would consider as being V sound curve. So what it means is that there's an emphasis on lower frequency. So if you love bass, definitely this is one of the IEM to listen to. And if you love treble as well, there's an emphasis on the upper frequency. So not so much on the mid-range because just like any typical V sound curve, the mid-range is kind of a bit suppressed, but not to a point that it would worry me. So definitely if you are into vocal-centric kind of IEM, probably you would feel that this engine 4 kind of a bit recessed. I would say that especially considering that this thing runs on dual driver, there's a good amount of cohesion and coherency with the sound itself. The way the dynamic flow, it is in fact fluid and harmonious. I do not feel that there's any kind of detachment or disengagement of different level of dynamic frequency operating with each other. With the energy level itself, it's easy for me to say that this Engine 4 is something that I would consider as being fun sounding, but amply analytical, even for certain type of music, especially if you are listening to modern electronic music. It sounds very clean, very crisp, and very engaging. But perhaps not so much for a bit more classical type of music, which require a bit more of precision. So what I'm trying to say is that perhaps on the technical aspect of it, it just lacked that, last mile of technicalities to make those type of very technical sound music like classical or even technical jazz, to bring out the details. Okay, there are still detail there, but do not expect it to be analytical. Okay, because the key factor for this Engine 4 is casual listening, fun and engaging. All right, so talking about the technical aspect itself, again, the focus for technicality is mainly on soundstage. So let's talk about soundstage. I feel that this Engine 4 is fairly wide, but perhaps the biggest strength of it is in fact the sense of holographic projection, spatial projection that it offers. In fact, it was good enough for me to use for gaming as well. And touching a bit more on the lower and upper frequency itself, the bass and the treble. So the bass itself is definitely something which I would consider as being very neat as well, fast and tidy. The balance between mid bass and sub bass is very well done. And in fact, I do not feel that the mid bass being, too strong to overwhelm either the lower mid-range or the sub-bass, and the sub-bass itself not being too pronounced to a point that it becomes something like a Harman type of tuning. And in fact, the upper frequency, it has ample amount of smoothness to not sound sibilant or piercing, at least to my ears, all right? Even when I subject it to very energetic music with lots of cymbals, all right? But I would say that perhaps being critical, depending on what type of recording that you have, especially if the recording is not, mastered very well, sometimes the upper frequency at the most extreme age of it would sound less, it's kind of a bit grainy in fact, but it doesn't bother me too much because that instance is very few in between. Okay, let's wrap things up for this SOUNDPEATS Engine 4. Simply put, I am impressed. Like I mentioned earlier, it exceeded my expectation. I do not expect a wireless device to sound this good, to feel this good when worn, and in fact, throughout the last month, I have found myself to be grabbing this a lot more than my regular wired IEM, for the fact that sometimes I do really enjoy the benefit, or should I say the comfort of being wireless, of not having any kind of cable attached, around to tangle or anything like that. And the fact that it runs on LDAC is definitely a comfort, at least to my subconscious, knowing that I am listening to almost lossless kind of quality. The only caveat that I would like to mention is that, first, this thing does not support ANC, so do not expect active noise cancellation. So when you use this outside in a, let's say, noisy environment, you would still hear noise, okay? But I believe SOUNDPEATS probably have different model which support ANC. And secondly, this Engine 4 does not support microphone natively through the unit. So you would still have to use your own microphone from your phone if you are answering calls and stuff like that. But other than that, I would say that this SOUNDPEATS Engine 4 is definitely a very solid IEM, wireless TWS IEM, if you want to try one.